In this video, we're going to talk about another ancient Native American city that fits the Book of Mormon. It's in the Portsmouth, Ohio area called the Portsmouth Earthworks or Portsmouth Mound Group. And it fits the right time and location for the Book of Mormon. I think it's the City of Gideon. And it's a very large site. There are a number of artifacts that have been recovered from it. In this video, we're going to talk about what we know about the site, look at the artifacts of the site, and how it may fit into Book of Mormon geography. Okay, so as indicated, this site is located in Portsmouth, Ohio, which is on the southern central portion of Ohio. It's right on the where the Scioto River flows south and meets the Ohio River. We'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit in Google Earth here. So here we have the Ohio River that flows southwest, forms the border between Ohio and West Virginia there. It actually hits a point just west of Huntington where it turns and comes northwest. And then here it meets the Scioto River, which flows down from the Chillicothe, Ohio area. In prior videos, I've explained why I think Chillicothe, Ohio is the location for the ancient city Zarahemla, and the Scioto River and the Ohio River being the Sidon River. Now, interestingly, anciently, at some point, this Ohio River, as it flows northwest, actually flowed through this valley here to the north, and then up just south of the Chillicothe area, and then joins the Scioto River, which is flowing south. So the Scioto River is flowing south. The Ohio actually flowed up and then met there and then flowed back down this way. And at some point, this was short-circuited by the Ohio River flowing across here. And now at this point, the Ohio River just flows to the west and no longer flows up that valley. You can see that at some point anciently, these were large valleys, large rivers. The Scioto River was much larger than it is now. Now it's just a small portion of what it was at some point anciently. We don't know exactly how that fits into Book of Mormon timeframes, how deep or wide this was at that particular time frame. But we're looking at this location here, Portsmouth, Ohio, just on the east side of the Scioto River, where it meets the Ohio River. And then this whole large valley here, that I think is the Valley of Gideon, essentially, and it has a number of earthworks along through this valley and down here and then up through here, and we'll go ahead and explore that. If you look at the Portsmouth earthworks in Wikipedia, as it says here, they're a large prehistoric mound complex constructed by the Native Americans, the Adena and Hopewell, in particular the Hopewell people, and dated to the 100 BC to 500 AD timeframe, which fits the Book of Mormon well. And it says it was one of the largest earthwork ceremonial centers constructed by the Hopewell. And it's kind of how you define large. Here they're defining that geographically, and it's because it extended so far. They're related sites that they view as connected. That's why they say it's one of the largest. I don't think the location was actually the most populated. It doesn't have the large types of enclosures. It has an enclosure, but we'll talk about that. But it doesn't have the same type of large enclosures that would handle large populations that the Chillicothe area and Fort Ancient areas had. So I don't think it was the top, one or two, but it definitely was one of the largest of the Hopewell sites. All right, so as it says, the majority of the mound complexes, it spreads out. We'll talk about each of those areas. Now, in the 1840s, Squire and Davis, who were early architects, when they toured and made diagrams and excavated and studies of the mounds. They did a number of diagrams related to the Portsmouth earthworks. At this point in the Portsmouth area, there's not much that's available to the public, and that you can see some of the large horseshoe mounds are still preserved. For example, this is about a 150-foot long horseshoe shape that was in the center of the site that I'll show you. And it has different things on the different portions of the site. Now we're going to go to each of these diagrams that Squire and Davis had, and then we'll do a little review of the site. So this is sort of an overview of the site. It has these 150-foot horseshoes. This is the city of Portsmouth as in the 1800s. And now this is, of course, all built up. But it had this sort of a central site with these roads that one went sort of west. This kind of heads towards the path up along the river to Chillicothe. There's also a Tremper Mound out this way, which we'll talk about. This one came down and then goes across the river, and there's this site here that they called the Old Fort. And then there's a long pathway down this way. This goes several miles to this other site here, sort of Temple Mound type site, another Barrow Mound site that we'll talk about. And these paths here, they just call them ancient lines, but they were paths, and they're about 150 feet wide as well. So very wide paths that went off these different directions for miles. Okay, so then the next one is this is that site down to the southwest. This is just across the Ohio River in the Kentucky area. They call this the Old Fort site. It has a Hopewell square, which is similar to the earthworks that are found in other Hopewell sites. This was a 15-acre, encompasses 15 acres. The walls here were about 12 feet tall. Actually, one spot got up to over 20 feet tall. So this could have been a fortified site. I did not include it in my grouping when I was putting together all of the known fortifications, the Hopewell fortifications. But you potentially could have done that, as this site could be viewed as a fortification since the walls were high enough. And then it has these also large enclosed areas, which I don't know what purpose, but this is just south of the Ohio River, and there's this flat area, and then just up on this raised area they had this, we'll call it a fort. Okay, so that's the first major portion of the site on the southwest. Now, the center of the site in the Portsmouth area, that's where you had those horseshoes, and this is in that valley that, as indicated, the paths came from multiple directions to this central spot. They had a ceremonial site with these large, again, about 150-foot horseshoes of 3 to 5 foot high. It's unknown purpose, probably some kind of ceremonial type setup. But this is the center of the site. And then across the river on the southeast in Kentucky, as it indicates here, this path continued about 1.5 miles, and it comes in, and you get this sort of interesting. It's almost like a cross. It's about a 22-foot tall mound in the center, and then it makes sort of this cross with rings around design that people can come into you can walk right in, you get to the center, and then I don't know what you have these rings around for unknown purpose. As indicated, it's 22-foot high mound in the center. All right, this is in Portsmouth, a mural. This kind of shows from that central site. Those are the horseshoes here looking down across, and you can kind of get a view of the hills and how these paths kind of come and combine to the center spot, and then also the path down to the other side across the river. I'm going to show you a short video. This just does as it says here, it was constructed by the Native Americans. Here it says about 200 BC, still fits the Book of Mormon time frame fine, to about 500 AD, and the Portsmouth Earthworks complex. And what this does is a 3D simulation, sort of a bird's eye view of what it might have looked like at that time anciently. So taking out the current buildings and structures, it makes for a nice video. I'm going to go ahead and put it on a little faster playback speed, and we'll just. I'm going to have the volume off, I think, because you don't need it. It's just music in the background. And it'll just show you a 3D simulation of what the site looked like. So this is that old fort, the square with a 20-foot high walls on the south side of the river. This is the Ohio River flowing towards the west. So this is that Kentucky area. It's taking you north. This is the Scioto River, which flows down this south way into the Ohio River out west. This is that central portion of the site. It's taking us up near the Tremper Mound site, which I'll stop. We'll pause right there. So just on the west side of the Scioto River, so now it's taking you around, so now you're looking south. Just on this west side of the Scioto River, you have a sort of a barrow mound type earthwork. I call it a barrow mound. If I've done previous videos on, if you haven't seen it, how the Dina in particular liked these kind of mounds where you have a mound in the center and then a ditch around it, then a wall around it, and with an opening. And there are sites like that look like this that were made anciently in Ireland, and they call them barrow mounds, and that's why I'm calling it a barrow mound type site. Okay, so this is called the Tremper Mound. This is part of the Portsmouth complex. It's just a little bit north of the river on the west side. And it has a wall, sort of an ovalish wall around it. And it has a design there. At first, I was thought, is that supposed to be an effigy, an animal effigy? People didn't really know. But when they excavated into this mound, as we'll discuss later, it turns out that there was a what they call a great house. So there was a building underneath with multiple rooms. I think it might have been a decommissioned ancient temple site. It was a great house, so it has the frames. It was also a sort of a sandstone wall. And then inside of this great house, there are signs of cremation or fires and eating. And then what happened is that it was burned down and then buried over. And I'll get a little bit more into that, but this is just the overview right now. So it takes you across the Scioto River, and now it's going to jump down to it's taking you down across the Ohio River. So now we're back into the southeast portion. This is the Kentucky part of the site. This is that, they call it the Temple Mound, where it's the 22-foot tall mound with sort of the cross and rings around it with a long path that goes all the way. It's like a mile and a half to the river and then a few miles. So it's like almost a 5-mile path to the center of the site there. And then it'll take you right back to the central portion and a bird's eye view. This is another barrow mound that was there on the Kentucky side. And then this is the big center of the site at Portsmouth. So Portsmouth, right there, as you can see, it had these paths coming from the different directions, and then this central spot with the horseshoes for some sort of ceremonial site there. And that's the Scioto River coming down south, the Ohio River going out west, and this it shows you the large extent of the site. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so that gives you an overview of what it looked like. Now, this Wikipedia article is actually pretty good. When you go down through it, it it's not only has some good direct information there, but if you continue to go down, there are lots of nice links. For example, you can go to lists of all the Hopewell sites. So if you're interested in researching on your own, a lot of the sites, the Hopewell sites, where they were, what information have has on them, it's a good central spot where you can start to jump off into lots of different links. It also has external links. We'll look at one of the videos there. And then it also just sort of gives you, like, if you want to explore the Adena culture or the Hopewell culture and what's known about them, it'll give you just a ton of links. As you'll see, the Adena, who I think were the Jaredites and Mulekites, I think that they failed to distinguish the two. But the Adena culture, you can see that they were, and this I think was the Mulekites, mostly in the Ohio area. I think the Jaredite culture actually goes up western New York into Canada as well. But you see that's mostly in the Ohio area, although it did stretch out some into Indiana and so forth. And then you can go to the Hopewell, and you can see, again, you can do links for a ton of the different Ohio Hopewell sites. It also shows the how they expanded a lot beyond. They're just not just Ohio. They're like entire Mississippi Valley, Eastern U.S. So here, looking this. So these are the sort of the central of it was the Ohio Hopewell here, but they extended all the way out, all the Mississippi Valley. I think in my geography, these would be considered the Lamanite. These cultures would be the Lamanite people here, and you have the Nephites here. You have some Lamanites up on the west, but that's how I view it. But anyway, it also shows you, interestingly, in addition to all those different sites, you can look at how they traded, for example, the copper. And here's the galena. Now, one of the things that they say about the Hopewell is that they didn't have iron or didn't smelt iron. But this galena is actually the most important ore for lead and also a source for silver. They see it a lot as a trade item among the Hopewell. I've done prior videos with evidence of working with metals and smelting, and then other things that they found valuable, like the mica, the pearls, obsidian, the pipe stone that they like to make pipes with, and the seashells that they liked. So anyway, it's a good site for it. Now, I want to show you this link, which takes you to a YouTube video. So that link takes you to this YouTube video. This is an individual, Emily Aldrich, who is works with a museum there in the Portsmouth area. Now, what I'm going to do for sake of time and clarity is I'm going to end up muting her dialogue for the most part. But what I'm going to do is what she does is it's about an hour long video. It's a good video. I recommend that you go and watch the whole thing, hopefully after you watch this video. But I encourage you to watch her whole video as she goes into the various artifacts that are found from the Portsmouth site. But for our time and purpose, I'm just going to scroll through so you can see some of the different artifacts. So I'm just, the point of this is we'll get through very quickly. I'll just show you the key artifacts that are found. So here, for example, is it's a banner stone made out of greenstone, and you have a gorget made out of slate. You can see, again, fine workmanship. The slate here was sourced from the Carolinas, so it shows the wide movement and trade routes. We can scroll. There's lots of pottery examples. Here's an example of the pottery. We can scroll a little bit more. Here's a good example of a copper spear point. So spears with use of copper for the spear points. This box is an interesting one. So it had a copper spear point. It has some pipes. It's got this, you could view it as a cross figure. It could also be the sign of Tanit, which is a Phoenician symbol. It depends on whether you view that as a cross or whether you view this as sort of more of like a woman's figure. But this was found with the Native American sites. There's, I guess, some question as to is that authentic and Native American, but this is one of the objects that was found there. Okay, we'll skip through. So this is an example of a hammer or banner stone. It looks that it could be used as this is made out of granite. There are other examples of pottery. Another example of pottery, for example. And then I'll get maybe a picture of the Barrow Mound a little better here. So this is how it currently looks. And this is how it looked in the 1800s when they did the diagram of it. So again, as you see that this similar design is found in a few different Adena sites. So I think it matches Jaredite or Hopewell. And there was one like this at Marietta, Ohio, if you've seen that video, but it's the mound in the center, ditch, a mound around, and then an entrance. And as I said before, this similar type of design has been found in ancient Ireland as well, which is an interesting connection possibly. Okay, so then we'll take a look at the Temple Mound site. Okay, so now we'll look at the sort of the Temple Mound site. This was that path and the sort of the cross and circles design. This shows you some more gorgets and pendants. You have they liked shells, so shells and beads. I'll take a look. They had copper bracelets. Now, if you've seen my video on the Back Creek Mound, or it's the Back Creek Stone, in it they found copper bracelets that are just like this. So what they had was this sort of rolled, bent shaped copper type bracelets. So again, this corresponds with what was found with the Back Creek Mound, which is a good cross sort of corroboration that Back Creek stone really is authentic. It fits the same types of devices that are found in the other Hopewell mounds, and in ancient Israel, have been found some bracelets that are done like that. Okay, so then she's made a map of related sites and mounds all up and down that valley and towards the north. And then we'll talk about the pipes that were found. Now, the Hopewell, at least for a time period, used pipes made out of pipestone where they would have these animal effigies. But even though you see a lot of samples, or you can see a lot of samples or pictures of them, they're primarily found in only two locations. One was in that Tremper Mound which was a great house that was burned and then buried over, and they thought it might be an animal effigy. It turned out it was like a house, and it had in it just dozens and dozens of pipes with these animal effigies. Most of the pipes were broken. Now, interestingly, and then buried over, the site was buried over. Now, interestingly, the other site where a lot of effigy pipes for the Hopewell were found was in Mound City, which is in Chillicothe. And it's a famous site there, the Mound City site. In one of the mounds, they found dozens and dozens, maybe over 100 pipes with animal effigies, and they were all broken too. And so it's almost all of the pipes come from those two locations where the same thing, they're found in the same way. The pipes, most of them are ceremonially broken, put on the ground, and then buried over. And so you could view that as one possible way to view that could be, for example, maybe they got the word of wisdom at some point in terms of the tobacco, or another possibility could be the breaking of the pipes, burying the pipes, is showing a peace, because the pipes would relate to peace treaties as well. So it could be happening at the time of Christ, in the beginning of the time of peace, and they bury all these broken pipes. What they show is beautiful artistry, so birds and all kinds of things there, and made out of pipestone. Okay, and so these are ones from the Trumper Mound in the Portsmouth area, and then she'll show you the ones from the Mound City as well. And very similar styling. Now, the Mound City, most of them are animals, but they do actually also have some faces, which is interesting because they show some faces, designs, which may show designs like facial tattooing or stuff that some of the people may have used at the time. And then mostly we'll skip through the rest, but she shows, for example, here's an example of a granite axe. There's lots of variety of stone axes and things, other arrowheads. There's copper axes. I think the copper axe was back here somewhere, maybe here approximately. Yeah, there's a copper axe. These are ear spools, sort of like for ear designs that were common among the Hopewell. There's other things found included a knife. Let's see, there's more of here's a slate, a knife made out of slate that was used. There are some other unexplained type objects. For example, this is a sphere made out of basalt, and nobody really knows the purpose of it, but it's just this stone sphere. There's also examples of stone bowls, and here's an example of another thing that was found, shark teeth. They like shark teeth. It also shows, since Ohio is nowhere near the ocean, that again shows the travel. A lot of the sources that of products that they have are all the way up from Canada, all the way out to Yosemite with the obsidian, all the way out to the Gulf of Mexico with the shark teeth and so forth. The Carolinas for the mica and some of the other stone, and slate. Here's an example of a stone bowl. Okay, so here's a stone bowl. Now, I did a previous video which talks about the Decalogue stone. With the Decalogue stone, there was a stone bowl, and stone bowl is much harder to make than a ceramic pottery type bowl. So why would they use it? And there was some discussion about how that might be used for Jewish cleanliness for the water. But anyway, there's an example of a stone bowl there. There's also been stone bowls found in the Chillicothe area and the Newark area. The Newark area was with the Decalogue stone and the Newark holy stones. And then there's an example. I did a video on, this is a sandstone discs, which may have been used for weights, like a weights and measuring system. And I did a video on the Armstrong Mount Carbon Armstrong Fort, which is a fort in the West Virginia area, and it had sandstone type discs as well. And then there's also mention of the sandstone block wall. Now, I did also a video. It's on the Chillicothe buried wall, which I think may have been a buried Hopewell, possibly Book of Mormon city. Now, with that buried wall, the evidence of it shows that it was made out of sandstone blocks that were put together. Now, interestingly, in that great house at the Trumper Mound, she'll talk about how it had a sandstone wall. So let's listen to her. I think it starts
associated with the Hopewell earthworks, but nobody really knows. It's very irregular to have a sandstone block wall inside one of the mounds. Who knows?
Okay, so anyway, she's just confirming that that Tremper Mound had a sandstone made a wall made out of sandstone blocks, which also may show how the Nephites or the Hopewell may have made some walls with sandstone as well. All right, so that's enough of that video. Again, it's one I recommend. My site has previous videos, as discussed, on the Chillicothe, the buried wall, for example. Where was that one? This one, the ancient buried wall, is the one that this was a sandstone wall that was found in the Tennessee area. Okay. Now, let's take a look at that Tremper Mound. This is that mound that was in that on the west side of the river. Again, first they thought maybe is that an animal effigy. Turns out that this was a building that was burned and buried over with artifacts, and it's up on a prominent location. I think this could have been a decommissioned temple site where they ended up when they decommissioned it, just kind of burning it up, covering it over. And the reason why I think that is that in the site, again, it was clearly a ceremonial building, large, multi-chambered, just giving an idea. So this is about 500 feet across. So this is a pretty decent sized building. And when they dug through the mound, they say that inside they called it a great house. And then, as they say here, the great house was eventually burned to the ground and heaped over with layers of earth to form the mound as we know it today. There are some later burials that came in. Inside the mound, there's a number of artifacts. We just saw many of those. There's a mention of the pipes. And as it says here, of the pipes, there were 136 of them. Most of them were broken. Okay. So again, there were lots of pipes put together, broken, and then buried over with a site. And they were able to restore 60 of the pipes, which is how we got the pictures there. And the pipes, interestingly, for the animals, it's not just like a lot of other Native American cultures, they would have just done predators or apex predators or things like that. But the pipes that the Hopewell did captures all kinds of animals: bears, cougars, bobcats, porcupines, beaver, deer, mink, rabbit, squirrel, turtles, toads, owls, other again, additional birds, cranes, Canada goose, the Carolina parakeet, which is interesting because a parakeet is a parrot. Parrots are normally tropical birds, but at the time of the Book of Mormon, there were parakeets that were in the eastern United States, including in the Ohio area. Actually, and there's even been bones found all the way up in the Ontario, Canada area. And then eagles, raccoons, foxes, and so forth. Okay. And then it talks about how they had sourced materials from far away. It talks about how some of the stuff that they used to make things included shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from upper Michigan and Canada, mica from the Appalachians, horns from Rocky Mountain sheep. I think that could have been related to the use of the sheep horns as a shofar. And anyway, so it's just a great site that I think matches the Book of Mormon really well. So where does the site fit into Book of Mormon geography? For me, I have it fitting as a City of Gideon, which is just south of the city of Zarahemla. Now, I understand that my geography is different than most. It's sort of a modified Hopewell geography. So, and again, the question is, and I've addressed this in previous videos, why do I think that this Ohio area was the Zarahemla area? Why do I think this is Gideon? And the answer is, when you look at the totality of the evidence, I feel that by far the evidence points towards the United States, particularly the eastern United States, as the location for the Book of Mormon. And that's because, first and foremost, the DNA, I've done a lot of the DNA the evaluation of the DNA evidence related to the Book of Mormon. That's what my book, The Face of the Nephites, about, which has it in detail. But all three types of DNA testing, the best DNA evidence for the Book of Mormon, all points to the eastern United States, particularly the Algonquin tribes. Now, uh, there are signs of DNA that could relate to the Book of Mormon throughout the Americas, but only in smaller quantities. The locations where you're talking about people that have a large portion of the and tribes where you have a large portion of the people having DNA that could fit with a Middle Eastern type ancestry. It's the Algonquin tribes and the descendants of the Algonquin tribes, which fits the Eastern United States. So, and that also then fits the prophecies and promises about the Promised Land. It fits the Hill Cumorah, which is in New York, being buried by Moroni. It all fits that Eastern United States. So once you have the location as the Eastern United States, then the Book of Mormon people had to have been the Hopewell. There's really no other choice, because at the time of the Book of Mormon events, the archaeology is well established that the Hopewell were the dominant culture throughout the Eastern United States. So if it was in the Heartland, it was the Hopewell. And if it was the Hopewell, then archaeologically we know that the center, sort of the hub and nucleus of their civilization, the most sites we have for them are sort of the nucleus is in that Ohio area. That's where the largest sites are. That's where all of the large fortified cities that fit the right time frame are. That's where we get the artifacts that most look like the Book of Mormon. And then you have other sites and locations throughout the United States, but the center, to me, clearly was the Hopewell. In fact, the ancient Native American trails kind of go towards that Chillicothe area, almost like a hub and spoke, some of those trails. And then when I did a video on the fortifications, and I researched all of the fortifications, Native American fortifications that fit the description in the Book of Alma, that fit the description from Captain Moroni's time frame. And I put on a map where those exist. And because the Book of Mormon says that the fortifications were built around the land of Zarahemla and between the land of Zarahemla and the land of Nephi. And where do you see those fortifications? It's all around Ohio, a little bit up in western New York, and some down, a little bit down in West Virginia. So that kind of fits this area being the land of Zarahemla, which would put the Chillicothe area as the center, as the city of Zarahemla. And then Gideon is just the city just south of Zarahemla, as described in the Book of Mormon, just south of Zarahemla on the way towards Manti. And just kind of showing the scriptures related to that. So, for example, in the Book of Alma, chapter 6, verse 7, it talks about when Alma left, he says he departed from the city of Zarahemla. He went over upon the east of the riverside and into the valley of Gideon, where the city of Gideon was built. So what this shows is that the city of Gideon was on the opposite side of the city of Zarahemla, which fits here. Chillicothe is just on the west of the Scioto River. Valley of Gideon is south, and the city of Gideon is south and just to the right of the Scioto River in this geography called Gideon. And it says city of Gideon was named after the Gideon who we know from the book of Mosiah. And this fits the right time frame because they came up just a little bit before 100 BC. And what did we see for the time frame for the building of the earthworks there at this site in Portsmouth is 100 BC from the archaeology. And then also in Alma chapter 17, verse 1, it talks about this is when Alma meets the sons of Mosiah. He said, so Alma had gone from Zarahemla to Gideon, and then he continues further south. And it says, as Alma was journeying from Gideon southward away to the land of Manti. So it shows that it's Zarahemla, and then south of Zarahemla is Gideon, and then further south is towards the land of Manti. and he meets those the sons of Mosiah who are coming north. They're coming towards the land of Zarahemla, and they meet. So it kind of shows that this Gideon and Manti are sort of on the way from the land of Nephi, which fits what I have here, where you would have the land of Nephi, and then one of the pass through is this Kanawha River Valley, where you would come up follow along the valley. There's actually a valley here you could follow as well. You follow along the valley up, and you would come right past up this Gideon area up towards City of Zarahemla. All right, so I'll go ahead and stop share there. Okay, so that shares my thought about the Portsmouth earthworks. The Portsmouth earthworks have fantastic artifacts, very large site, fits the right time frame of the Book of Mormon. And the question then is, where does it fit in the Book of Mormon? I propose the City of Gideon. I could see others come up with a different connection or correlation there, but to me, it clearly was a good example. It's clearly a good example of a people that fit the Book of Mormon in the right time frame, and then the artifacts show us a lot more about those people. So anyway, if you have any thoughts or questions, let me know. Thanks, and don't forget to like or subscribe the video. I appreciate it. Thanks.